And I think Ceres and her placement in a person's chart is so vital for them making sense of where do we fit? How do we express that creative energy in a way that honors both masculine and feminine energy and doesn't put one or the other on a pedestal or under our feet?
Welcome to the Feminine Alchemy Podcast, where we explore the truth about the feminine, the peaceful, the wild, and the visceral. I'm your host, J.N. Behringer, joined by my co-hosts, Julie Dean Richards and Kaylee Rose. Each week, we explore the deep mysteries of the feminine and help listeners apply them to their daily lives in a practical way. Join us to unlock the hidden wisdoms your soul has been waiting for.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Feminine Alchemy. I am J.N. Behringer, and we have Julie Dean Richards and Kaylee Rose here as usual. Say hi.
Hello.
Hi, everyone.
This week, we are talking all about Ceres, how she works in your birth chart, and all of her good magic, just like we talked about Pallas Athena last week. We're doing that for Ceres. It's amazing. So in light of Ceres being a harvest goddess, our get to know you question is all about what have you harvested this year?
What comes to mind is just the retreat that we put on in the summer, the Into the Heroine's Heart retreat. It was so divinely guided in so many different ways, and a lot of work went into it at the same time. And it came out of that experience just feeling like, oh my gosh, I was just handed the most beautiful experience. And yeah, I worked for it, but it just feels like this gigantic gift. And in putting on that retreat, I also feel like I harvested this clearer sense of like, oh yeah, I do know what I'm doing. I mean, I don't always know what I'm doing, but I have this skill and that skill, and I have all these things that I can bring to the table that are valuable. And it's like, okay, yeah, consciously I knew that before, but now it feels more real in my own body. It's like I feel it more instead of just thinking it. So that's what I'll say as one thing, or a handful of things, however you want to look at it, that I've harvested so far this year.
Yeah, I was thinking about the retreat as well. I thought about there's been a ton of work this year. There's just been a ton of change this year. I feel like I've harvested this lifestyle this year. A whole new lifestyle. There's been so much change this year for me. It's been huge. And a lot of people don't know this, but as I'm speaking to you now, I'm sure when this episode actually airs, I will have gone to so many more states than this. But I've seen half of the United States this year already in a period of less than 5 months. And
Wow.
yeah, so many.
That's huge.
Yeah, so many. Like my kids have seen half of the United States in less than 5 months this year. And, you know, we went from like living in a house, selling a house, to living in a tent, not selling the tent, keeping the tent, buying a trailer. And it's so fascinating just to see how much this lifestyle has changed me and my husband in really good ways. In so many ways, it's been taxing. Like, as so many people, that's what people ask me all the time, like, oh, this must be so tiring, it must be exhausting. And it is. It, like, some places are the worst, like some places are literally the worst, but some places are the best and they're great and we enjoy them, and we've just enjoyed our adventures. It's been so cool to see my kids, you know, enliven. It's been really cool to watch them on to watch their astrology and astrocartography, to see how it matches up with them. And honestly, it's been so exciting to see my husband so enlivened, because he was living on, while I was at law school, I was living on my North Node line, which you can imagine, like, for me, great line, great time, you know, a lot more. I mean, it's a lot of pushing you forward, but he was living on his Pluto line. So that whole time. And so for him, and it was a Pluto ascendant line, which for people who don't know what that means, it's like Pluto on your body. So it was really physically taxing for him, and a lot of huge transformation in his work, of course, which you would also expect on that kind of line. But it's been so cool to see him just so enlivened by this lifestyle. And of course, he grew up moving all the time, living in tons of different countries. He's a Sagittarius. So obviously, so exciting for him. But yeah, I feel like we've harvested a lifestyle that works for us, even though it's so different than everybody else. And it's been really lovely.
That is so beautiful. I love how you just highlighted all of the good things about, because I'm always curious. Like, that sounds like I would scream a lot if I was doing this, but I am not you. So you may be handling it way better than I, or maybe I would handle it better than I thought. Who knows? But yeah, thank you for that update. Because I think a lot of people are curious, like, what is it like to be nomadic like that, and what are the gifts? And I love how you give us updates once in a while. If you're not following Julie on Instagram, like, do it, because she puts updates on that kind of stuff, which is awesome. What have I harvested? I've harvested a lot of personal development this year, and I'm not really happy about it, but I know it's good for me. Things like letting go of deeply held beliefs and like things that were like put into my bones in a way that were not even mine. So I believe they were mine because that's where they were. And that was really hard and painful to pull out, mostly because the best way to find those things is to look at your real life. And so if real life is really screwy, then usually there's a corresponding internal thing. And especially if it's like, this is a theme. I have been here exactly here before. I've done this before. I know this is too familiar and it's too like exquisitely created just for me, that like no one else would be this triggered by this. So clearly this is something I'm supposed to be dealing with right now, and I couldn't find it. I couldn't find it. I couldn't find it. And it was so deeply embedded. I finally found it. Oh my gosh, but it took me all summer. It just felt like I was having the rug pulled out from under me every single day. You know, it was just crazy. I have so much more sense of safety now and a sense of peace regardless of external circumstances. And that's really what I was seeking, was like, I was so terrified of everything all the time, and I used being right as a way to feel safe, and that's not the same thing. It's really, really hard to pull that apart. Well, it was for me. For a lot of people, it might be easy. Who knows? So that's what I harvested, was a lot of annoying personal development, and I'm mad about it, but also it's good for me. So here we are. This is the medicine I needed, you know? And I have harvested like actual fruits and vegetables, like a lot. I have a full I've done a lot of canning. I'm making pickles, like not just like sticking them in vinegar, but I'm fermenting them in salt water, brine. Canned tomatoes. I have like bags and bags and bags of frozen tomatoes. I've grown really interesting. Like, this was the year of the peppers. Like, all of a sudden I kept attracting all these crazy amounts of like super spicy peppers. And I'm like, I don't even, like, most of my family, they can't deal with spice. And these are like crazy spicy peppers. And I think this is more of a shamanic thing that I'm supposed to be doing. And that's more related to that. But all of these, like, I got free pepper seeds, like hot pepper seeds I'd never heard of. All these different like hot peppers have been coming in. So I have way, way too many serranos, guys. That's also what I've been harvesting. So here we are.
You wanted a spicier and you got a spicier.
That's
You got
spicy.
a
Did I ask for a
spicier.
spicy year? Maybe I
You
did.
must have. Because you harvested it.
I am harvesting a spicy year. I tell you what, this is real spicy. But you know what you think you don't realize about hot peppers is they actually all have a different flavor. Even the super spicy one. Like, my son bit into one. Oh, this was a genius moment. He's just like, I read that this pepper is 10,000 times more spicy than a serrano. But then afterwards, he goes, tasted like a bell pepper first. I wasn't expecting. So, you know, they all taste different, and it's good. It's good. So, yeah, too spicy for the pepper. That's what I've been harvesting. But let's talk about Ceres, because I could just ramble about my garden for like an actual year. Ceres is all about, what are you harvesting? How are you nourishing? All those things. So, Kaylee, tell us about the astronomy of Ceres before I start talking too much about my garden.
Okay, deal. No, I was assigned the astronomy portion because I totally geeked out before we started recording. I like love the astronomy behind Ceres because it's so perfect. So very perfect. So just a little bit of backstory on Ceres. She was, well, I call her she, the asteroid. It was the first member of the asteroid belt to be discovered, and was discovered by Giuseppe Piazzi, 1801. So it's been a little while, but she's also the only one of the asteroids in the asteroid belts that was reclassified as a dwarf planet. And she was the first dwarf planet to receive a visit from spacecraft. So that's kind of cool. She is the largest body in the asteroid belt by far. Like, she makes up a ton of it. 5%. It's 25% of the asteroid belt, but she's still like way, way smaller than Pluto. But her discovery is part of why Pluto was reclassified as a dwarf planet, which is super interesting because if you look at the mythology of Ceres and Pluto, they're very connected to each other through Persephone. But we'll get into that more later. Another really cool thing about the astronomy of Ceres is that it's one of the only places in our solar system that astronomers are actually hopeful there could be life, because there is more water. Like, Ceres is made up of more water than our planet Earth is. There is so much water there.
I
Right?
did not know that.
Yeah.
I mean, the
Yeah.
Ceres Pluto connection, I was almost like, I gotta unmute myself and just like, whoa, but like, there's water there? Everybody's always said there's no water anywhere else. What are you talking
Yeah.
about?
I mean, I think most, if not all of it, is ice and vapor. They also believe that the core has a lot of water, like dirty, they called it dirty water, dirty ice and rocks in the mantle. Like, there may not be living things there now, or there may be, but the chances are much higher on Ceres than pretty much anywhere else in the solar system that there could be life. Ceres is also considered kind of like an embryonic planet. I was going to say a baby planet, an embryonic planet, because she almost became a full planet, but wasn't able to because of the gravity of Jupiter, which is also really interesting with the mythology, because Jupiter, or Zeus, in mythology is her brother, but also is part of why she experiences so much grief. And so just the mirroring of the astronomy with the mythology that we're going to go into is just, I don't know, I geek out about it. It's so, so fascinating. Anyway, I will stop waxing eloquent about the astronomy and we can move on to the mythology.
Fantastic. Oh my gosh. Let's talk about the myths because, yeah, there's a lot of correspondence between the astronomy and the astrology here. Incredible. Incredible.
Yeah, so I'll just start with that. I'm sure Kaylee has tons and tons of background, also more, but I will give kind of the usual overview that people hear about who Ceres is. So the other name for Ceres is Demeter. You probably figured that out when Kaylee said Persephone, right? Mother of Persephone, who in the more Olympian myths is the one who supposedly gets captured by Hades, or the god of the underworld, Pluto, and taken down and then becomes the queen of the underworld. She has to stay there for half of the year. And who's pissed about that? Her mom. Her mom's super angry even before. So, like, when Pluto takes her down to the underworld, Demeter is like fighting and trying to yell at Zeus, right? Jupiter, who we talked about, and be like, hey, bring my daughter back. What the heck, you know? And he's like, no one can come back from the underworld. Sorry, blah, blah, blah. I can't really help you. And is super rude to his sister and basically like deal with it. And she's like, oh, you're going to play that game? Okay, I'm going to make the earth die and kill everything, because she is goddess of the harvest, goddess of childbirth, very much about mothering, all those pieces. So she makes everything grow. She makes the wheat grow. She makes all the stuff grow. So she makes everything die and brings us the first winter. And then finally, Zeus is like, oh, okay. If Persephone hasn't like eaten anything, like she can come back up. But Persephone had eaten something. She'd eaten the pomegranate. Sometimes they say 4 seeds or 6 seeds or whatever. She'd eaten some seeds of the pomegranate. And because of that, they made a deal and said, okay, she has to go underground for half of the year or for 3 months of the year, however you see it, or 4 or whatever. She has to go down for some period of time and then she can reemerge. So Demeter is very sad every time that Persephone goes into the underworld. So that's how we get winter, and then we get spring. So those are the typical things that people know about Demeter goddess of the harvest, really loves her daughter, willing to fight for her daughter. There's tons more here. And I really want to insert Hecate into this because she is part of this whole transaction and also important. But I think that will probably have to be another whole thing. But Kaylee, tell us more, because I'm sure there's more pre-Olympian stuff we should know about her.
Yeah, there is more pre-Olympian, pre-Hellenic stuff. So Ceres, I'll probably refer to her as Demeter more often than Ceres at this point, because the Roman mythology, Ceres is her Roman name and Demeter is her Greek name. The Roman mythology is very I'm just going to borrow all the stuff from the people I conquered. Whereas the Greek mythology is a little bit more hey, we actually are connected emotionally and psychologically with this thing. But I'll probably go back and forth. So just for those of you who are listening, if it gets confusing, Demeter and Ceres, they are the same person, I promise. But Demeter, she originally was a Cretan goddess, so from Crete, and she was the Earth Mother, and she had an Earth daughter. And I don't say Earth Mother in the sense of the great Earth Mother, like Gaia type situation. She was more the Earth Mother of things growing from the earth. So food, especially. And that mothering connection, the nourishing and mothering connection. And in a lot of these early myths, there would be a female deity who would have a mature form and a younger form, but they would be the same person. And that's how Demeter and Persephone originally, or Kore, another name for Persephone is Kore, which means maiden. They were the mother and the daughter who are one. And the super, super fascinating thing about their original mythology is that Demeter ruled over the underworld as well, because all food at that point came from the earth. And so the story goes that Demeter was focusing on teaching human beings how to cultivate food, how to grow food, how to store that abundance for the future and things like that, and that there was no winter, that it was just always things were growing, things were beautiful. And she had her daughter version of herself who was simultaneously her and another person, which is a really fascinating concept that is not unfamiliar to us, but usually we think of it through a male lens rather than a female lens. But Persephone noticed the spirits of the dead wandering the earth, and that they seemed confused and that they seemed sad. And she went to her mother and was like, hey, what's going on here? Is there not someone to receive them into the underworld? And Demeter essentially said, hey, I deal with the living. My job is to feed people. My job is to mother and nurture. I have nothing to do with the dead, even though the underworld is part of my domain. And Persephone did not love that response, because she had compassion on the spirits of the dead. And she was like, well, they're just wandering the earth and they look sad and they're confused. And she essentially said, I will go into the underworld. I will lead them down there. I will create a space for them to be and to live and to continue having their experiences, not live in the sense of being alive, but live in the sense of having experiences. And that was how Persephone became essentially the queen of the underworld, was that she chose through compassion to go down and create a space for the spirits of the dead. And that was really hard for her mother at first, and there was a lot of grief there, but that's what Persephone chose to do, and that ultimately set the stage for this idea that from death comes life. And there's actually a lot of research into this idea that Persephone as a goddess figure even predated, actually came from a completely different source and was originally the queen of the underworld, not having anything necessarily to do with Ceres. So it's possible that there was a myth that predated that very ancient myth with this female deity ruling the underworld. And it's just really fascinating how things morphed over time, because in society originally, the fundamental unit of society was the mother and the child, not the husband and wife or the man and woman, because people did not understand how children came into being. There's a woman and now she's pregnant, and now there's a baby. And they used to think like it was all because of the woman. They had no idea the connection between sex and the birth of a child. And so a lot of these earlier myths are very mother-child centric. And I think this is going to be a little bit of a soapbox for a second, but I think it's interesting that like the world began in a lot of ways in this sense of like women are amazing and they're connected to their children, and men, they must have a purpose, but like their purpose is more protection. Like they weren't necessarily involved in, they weren't seen as being involved in the creation of life. And so women in some ways were worshipped as the source of life. And then at some point we swung the pendulum too far, and it got to this point of like men are the best and women need to be pushed down, and we have male gods. And even in the Olympian myths, the female deities looking petty and foolish, and the male deities looking like powerful, even though they look pretty foolish to me often. They make some pretty foolish decisions in those myths. But the pendulum swung too far, and we even went to the point in our own society where like women and children were viewed as the property of men. And now it's like all of us are trying to find this middle ground, because neither extreme really works well for us. And I think Ceres and her placement in a person's chart is so vital for them making sense of where do we fit? How do we express that creative energy in a way that honors both masculine and feminine energy and doesn't put one or the other on a pedestal or under our feet? I just get so excited about these ancient myths, and also the application for today for bringing greater balance and unity instead of division.
I am loving this, honestly. I think that most of the time we just don't think about any of this. And this is a top priority. There was a time when it was all one-sided, and then you're saying it swung into the other. And now we're in a time where we're asking these questions and we're integrating all of the information, all of it that's in this collective unconscious, which includes the oldest myths too. And we're going, okay, what does unity look like? What does integration actually look like? And that's why you're saying like Ceres is a really important point in the chart, because it's where we're going to start to integrate some of this stuff. It's so powerful. I was like, I don't even know where my Ceres is. Why don't I know this? And so I was like, I have to look this up. Yeah, look this up because I don't even know.
Yeah, and it's so fascinating because even though we've tried, we can't get rid of like the true remnants, right? Like we can't get rid of the roots, and there are just some things that can't change. Like for example, like Kaylee was saying, you always know who the mother of a child is. You do, because there's a literal cord between the mother and the child. There's a literal cord. The baby comes out of her, but there is and can be question about who the father is. And when did that play into time? And we still have this happening today because of this is just a biological fact. When babies come out of women, there's a cord. That's a biological fact. So we see these pieces, and we even see it, like Kaylee mentioned the law, like you can kind of see that play out through the law, even as the pendulum has swung. Somehow we've kind of forgotten the roots of our creativity and the roots of, our abilities and how we can come together. And so I think this is really beautiful. And I think it goes right along with Ceres application in your chart also, as what are you harvesting? What did you bring to life? What is there a cord between you and that thing, right? Like what came out and is tied to you so deeply. So I love that we're looking at this even deeper than that. And I wanted to say, you can see like the change in the influence over time from the Greek to the Roman and from Crete, really, because in the beginning, it's so interesting because it's Kore who's the maiden, who's Persephone. It's her own choice. And she still kind of gets that a little bit in the next myth. She kind of chooses, I guess, because she eats the pomegranate, but like then it's like the choice is taken away from her. So I think this placement series can be a good view of like what were things that we didn't have what were things that seemingly we don't have choice about that we do have choice about? So that's maybe a deeper, a more subtle application, but like, where are we leaning into one side of this myth rather than the other as well when we're interpreting this asteroid?
Okay, this brings up another thing related to mythology, and then I will stop, I promise. But when you were talking about Persephone, like seemingly not having choice in the Hellenic or Olympian myths or even Roman myths, that myth in a lot of the literature is called the rape of Persephone, and yet there is no actual mention of rape. It's super interesting to me to go back through that and look through it and be like, okay, why is it called the rape of Persephone? I mean, yes, she was taken against her will in the myth, but was she taken in a sexual sense against her will? It's never actually, nothing is said that really indicates that. And it's like, how fascinating that even in the phrasing of that, there's this pitting of Hades against Persephone. There's this pitting of them against each other that I think mirrors the pitting of the masculine energy and the feminine energy, and men and women against each other, that's artificial, that didn't necessarily have to be there. And that is showing up in our society over and over again, that like, okay, this pitting against us against each other thing, artificial, not necessary, and is destroying all of us. And now I will be done.
Yes. Thank you, Kaylee. Yes. I'm just here for all of this. I have so many thoughts, but they're in a totally different direction. And I just want to sit with this sensations that we're experiencing of like, Kaylee, I can hear the anger and the frustration and almost the tears of rage about this
Yeah.
pitting each other against each other. Like that's exactly the problem, right? Any of that. It also is like I have this theory, and that's only ever been proven true, but I still call it a theory. But there's this theory of what I call the attack of the origin. There's a wherever it came from, in order for you to like prove that you're the best and like prove that you're like on your own and independent, you have to go and kill the thing that you came from. And this is the cycle that repeats not only in women but also in people of color, right? Because we all came from Black people. So that's like another theme that's coming in here, even as the myths are shifted. Even as the myths are shifted, we're seeing this again. We're attacking the origin, we're diminishing the role that this woman played in the underworld, or diminishing even like when you think of like the Olympian myths, the first one you're not going to say is Persephone, right? No one's saying that. No one's saying that. It's like this like random little side myth that it was like, yeah, sure, that happened. But it's like it's actually super incredibly powerful. Like she was the goddess of the underworld. It's like the opposite of Zeus in a way, but it was a woman and no one talked about that. So yes. Yes, I love this. I love this. I love all of it.
Yeah, Jan, I agree. And I think we can see this, like this attacking the origin across culture, regardless of what culture you come from, regardless of what race you come from, regardless of where you are. Even when I lived in Japan, the Japanese have this whole thing about the Chinese, and the Chinese have this whole thing about the Japanese and how they kill them. And the Koreans have this thing about the Japanese, and like taking and taking and taking. We have that across all cultures. There's just this thing, right, where this superiority complex that we happen to have. But anyway, I do think there's lots of other pieces of Ceres that we need to chat about. And there is actually an asteroid called Persephone as well, I believe. So,
Different asteroids that have versions of her name. Proserpina, Persephone. I think there's another one, but yeah.
yeah, so let's go into Demeter as like this piece. So I love this idea that she and Persephone, or she and Kore, were the same, but they're also different, which is like that mother-daughter connection in so many ways. And so I'm sure you thought your mind was going in a different direction, maybe along those routes, or the harvest route, or let's examine more.
That's actually connected to the route I was going to go with it. Okay, this myth I think is such an important myth for an example of mothers who are going through divorce and dealing with shared custody. when you start thinking about this in terms of like, oh, my heart is sad because my child is gone, like all of that. And like, this is like one of the first mentions of some version of like shared custody. And if you've never dealt with that before, you even see it when you get married, right? Like, whose house are we going to spend Thanksgiving at? You know, and there's this grief of like, I have to give up something in order to create. And there's this back and forth, and there's a tension and a sacrifice and a joyful celebration all at the same time. And it's all hand in hand. And it's really, really important to recognize that along with the joyful celebration and the harvest, something does die sometimes. Like, that's often one for one, but that doesn't mean that it has to be. It's just also recognize every single time you receive something, you're also letting go of something because you only have so many hands, right? That kind of thing. It was definitely something that I leaned into as I've been navigating shared custody, or, you know, child air traffic controlling is what I call it, because it's literally like just kids come in and kids go in and who's where when.
Yeah, and that's a lot to deal with. It's a lot. It reminds me also, like, I'm sure there are so many women like listening who have to deal with this, and it is so difficult. And it just reminds me of like Ceres' connection to the seasons also, like the seasonality of things, that you have a winter every year. Like, there's going to be part of you that dies. You know, there's just part of you that dies. And sometimes that has to do with your children. Sometimes that has to do with your career. Sometimes that has to do with the intimate parts of yourself, friendships. And it's interesting to see, you know, even though she's, I guess we should tell people this. If you're looking for her in your chart, she often looks like a sickle, which I was going to mention, which is so interesting because lots of times the sickle is associated with death. We associate like the Grim Reaper and things like that with the sickle many times. And so if you're looking for her in your chart, she'll often look like a round hook or a sickle and a cross at the bottom. And I think that's really beautiful in this representation of as the feminine in general, like everything as you sow shall you reap, but also like there's always going to be something that dies. There's always going to be this season that you have that's dying. And so I do think that Ceres in many ways is connected to the seasons of our lives, different seasons that we have, and like things that we have going on, that there is a seasonality to. Like, there is this like constant cycle. Like, you can find some of your cycles in Ceres and her placement and the house that she's in also.
So good. So true. There's so much nuance and I love it. I really do. Oh, can we talk about a little bit about, like, we talked about Jupiter, but then when we were talking about the astronomy of it, there's a relationship to Jupiter. Jupiter was mean to her and all of that. The relationship to Pluto is that there was a push-pull with the daughter and all of those things. And so just that concept of let's circle back and go, okay, there was a connection with Pluto, and there's an astronomical connection with Pluto. There's an astronomical connection with Jupiter. Just all in a row. I just wanted to say that out loud. So good. So poignant. And it's just another way that I go, literally nothing is random. They don't randomly choose what to name asteroids. They don't. They're inspired. It is that way. And the point is that it's supposed to be a reflection. It's a reflection of our inner psyche. It's a reflection of our collective unconscious, right? That's all we're talking about with astrology. The heavens don't control us. They're reflecting our reality onto us. So if somebody's looking in their chart and they see the sickle because they've got their asteroid goddesses turned on, and if you don't see the sickle, then you might not have it turned on. What should we expect to be interpreting now that we've said all these beautiful, lovely things about the myth, about the asteroid herself? How do we make this be real life? You know, how do I make it apply to my actual day-to-day experience?
Well, the position of Ceres in a person's chart can give them a lot of information about their connection to food, for one thing, and how they interact with food and nourishing their own body, but also love. And that can be a mother's love, that can be self-love. Ceres can give us a sense of how we truly, truly take care of ourselves, how we nurture and nourish ourselves, how we tend to want to nurture and nourish other people. And she can also give us insight into how we handle grief, how we handle it when things that we expected to happen didn't happen, and things that are out of season. It's like, no, that wasn't supposed to happen. Look at Ceres and you're going to have a sense of how you're probably going to react to that. That's what's coming immediately to mind. Julie, do you have anything you want to add to that?
So many things. I love Ceres. For people who may not have caught it, I mean, we talked about this, right? She's going to be connected to motherhood because, like, she is the mother god. She's connected as a mother god, an earth goddess, obviously connected to the harvest, food. The word Ceres is part of the word. That's where we get cereal, right? So, what Kaylee was talking about with nurturing, nourishing, food, this is also going to apply when you look at mundane astrology, which means not like mundane as in like, that's so boring, but mundane as in like worldwide astrology. Mundial, when we look at the earth in general, that's going to be connected to food supply and supply chain. So she will be really connected to those pieces, especially things like produce and grain and stuff that comes from the earth. Of course, connected to all of that, but she has a particular, like, she's particularly connected to grains and fruits and vegetables and things like that. So that's one thing to look at as well. And then, of course, this is going to tell you a lot about motherhood, like your motherhood journey. What is your motherhood journey going to look like? How is it? Especially if you can learn aspects. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, please go back to our astrology episodes. We did a whole episode. I was like so surprised because the aspects episode has the least listens out of all of the astrology episodes. And that one is like really key. Like, it's a sleeper. Like, it's fun to listen about like planets and signs, but aspects give you a lot of nuance. So if you feel weak in that area or like you don't know it very well, go back and listen to that episode because you can get a lot based on, okay, what is my Ceres dealing with? Not just like where is she or what house is she in, but like who is she next to? Who's she across from? Who is trying to block her? What's going on with her? So that's going to tell you a lot about your experience of motherhood. If you are a man, and you're like, I don't have this will talk about like the connection. This can still talk about your connection to your children. Oftentimes though, it's going to connect you to your mother. Like, how did you feel? And that's for men and women. Like, it can speak a lot to like your mother and how do you feel about her? But for men, it will talk a lot about like mothering relationships. How does that feel to you? And even the relationships where you act more like a mother than a friend or a brother, like those relationships, you can learn a lot from Ceres. One thing I wanted to say again, I've mentioned this before, but it's worth saying again, is that Ceres, there's a lot of astrological research out there now that Ceres is the third benefic. And so when I say that, what that means is like we talk about Venus and Jupiter and we're like, they're so great. They're so beneficial. They are helping us so much. And Ceres can be seen as a benefic. I know in my work as a locational astrologer, when I work with her, she is very beneficial. People tend to love living on Ceres lines. I mean, depending, like Ceres Mars or like Ceres Pluto can get like, you know, tough. If she's paired with a tougher planet, obviously that's going to have its resonance, but people tend to love being on Ceres lines. And I think part of that is Ceres also tends to connect us to our ancestry. She tends to connect us to the things we want to harvest, abundance, like Jan was talking about, what we feel is abundant. I find when people live on Ceres lines, they feel like, I love the earth here. I love how beautiful it is. I love the nature. And also like, I have an abundance of resources. I have the stuff. So when people come to me and they're like, I need certain resources, I will often look for Ceres because she, especially when it comes to like nature, food, water, supply, she's the one to look for.
I was just looking up Ceres in my chart and I've got her at 11 degrees Virgo in my 7th house. And I double lied last week. My palace is in Leo. Whoops.
You're just messing with us, Jan.
See, that is the area of my chart, like inside the 7th house. I don't have a lot of activity other than those two things. So, I don't have it memorized as much as I thought I did, apparently.
It's too funny. Too funny.
But she's actually in Virgo, right? Like she's really in Virgo. Like
Ceres is in Virgo.
She's really.
I have it right here in multicolored truth with the capital T documentation and stuff. I'm killing me smalls. Oh my gosh, this is nuts. Anyhow, so It's funny that you're saying all these things, because I'm like super judgy about how people mother, and how I'm not how like other people. I just like however you do it is however you do it. But I've always been particular about that kind of thing, and that's a very Virgo thing to be when it comes to mothering, and about food. Super particular about food. Had this whole conversation yesterday with my husband, and I was like, "We got to eat in a particular way," and he's like, "I don't know I don't understand the difference between these eggs and those eggs," and I'm like, "I don't know how to explain that. I don't
They're
know how to
just
get there."
different, okay?
They're different. And then I say science words, and he's like, "I don't care about science words." And I'm like, "Dang it. All of my arsenal is gone." But it's in the seventh house. Here we are.
That's perfect. So perfect.
So what does Ceres and the elements mean, now that I've told my funny stories? What does it mean when we have Ceres in fire sign?
Well, I have Ceres in a fire sign, but Kaylee, go ahead.
Ooh.
So I want Kaylee to talk first because I'm curious
You're
what
good.
she'll say.
I was just going to say, before we dive into that, I just wanted to highlight, because we have talked about it in our previous Asteroid Goddess episode, that everything we've talked about with Ceres is why I felt so good about putting Ceres as the ruler of Cancer and the fourth
Yes.
house in Resonant Astrology. She's just this perfect fit for so many reasons. And so, for those of you who are following along with my work, that's just something to think about, that all of this that we've been talking about also relates to her connection to Cancer in the fourth house. But let's definitely talk about Ceres in the elements now.
Okay, but that just makes like the visual I have of this, because Cancer and Ceres, okay, it's just like this plump little mama. That's my favorite. And she's just gonna feed you. She's gonna make you all the food and just feed you all the time. Like, that's, to me, is like, yes, that's Ceres Cancer
Well, and
experience.
like nourish you, but also I love that in the story, even in the Roman one, right? She has like all this emotion, and Kaylee talked about grief and feeling grief, but also anger, right? Like being so mad at her brother that she's willing to burn it all down. What are you willing to burn it all down for? And I do feel, as a Cancer, someone ruled my son where my son is in Cancer, I do feel that Cancer has that, like, these are the people I'm willing to, I'm willing to love and nurture and like burn it all down for people, like that, mama bear energy. And also I can feel the depths of the grief, right? I always think about like Cancer as the ocean, and I feel like Ceres works really well with that. And like all the water on Ceres as an asteroid, I love that as like being connected to Cancer as well.
So cool. So cool. So, Julie, what's it like to have Ceres in a fire sign?
I don't even know. No, can we have Kaylee talk first? Because I have some things I want to say, but I want to hear what Kaylee has to say first.
Kaylee, what's it like for Julie to have Ceres in a fire sign?
Because I know all the things. No. So, Ceres in a fire sign it's interesting to think about it this way, but that could be an indicator that you have a very active metabolism, that when you do interact with food, that you might be kind of quick about it, both the eating of it and the processing of it. But also that the things you love and care about and the things that you are willing to burn it down for, you're really, really willing to burn it down for. And that there's a certain intensity and dynamism, but also a playfulness and a like let's make nurturing and nourishing a fun thing. Let's make it an embodied thing. And that what emotions when you experience like grief or even rage, that it's a very, very visceral feeling. It's very just in the body. It's not in the head. It's 100% in the body. That is most likely what you're going to experience with Ceres in a fire sign.
Yeah, I think that I think that checks out. I wouldn't say I am quick. Like I wouldn't say my metabolism is quick or like I'm quick about food. Although because okay, so full disclosure, I have Ceres and Aries but she's in 27 degrees. So she's in that third decan, which is a little bit more mature version of Aries. And she's also in the 6th house. So much more particular taking it, being meticulous. I do feel like if my nutrition, if I don't nourish myself, I burn out so hard. So that's like a huge thing, like especially with Aries, being, I don't want to, like fire signs. Okay, I'm sorry, fire signs. I am married to a double fire sign. I love all the fire signs. I'm just going to say it, fire signs. You're a little bit more self-centered than other signs, and that is just the way that it is. Fire just tends to focus on itself. Aries is very good at focusing on the self, especially because, it's the starter one and it's the one who wants to look at itself. So that for me really plays out in this, like, if I don't put myself first, everything dies. I will die. My relationship with my kids dies. I feel terrible and awful, and I have to be careful, like, not to burn out. I would say, like, the visceral experience is very true. Having visceral experiences. And also, what I was thinking about with this, mostly this is because Aries is very connected to the body and the self. I was thinking a lot about it as, like, I feel like I have so many seasons. My body has a million different seasons. I have done the thing where, like, I have gained 90 pounds, right? I've done the thing where I've gained almost 100 pounds. Yeah, probably 100 pounds. And I've lost 80 pounds. And I've gained, like, I have so many seasons, and like the breastfeeding season, and like just so many, I just feel like my body goes through a lot of different seasons, and I go through so many seasons of, like, I'm not, even though it's the sixth house, I think if I'm not consistent, it's really hard for me. Like, I have to, the seasons of working out and not working out are that's like the big thing. Like, I drop the ball and the ball drops really hard sometimes, right? I'm too quick to like jump in. I do feel like sometimes I am too quick, or I am very quick about jumping on the health train, like being like, I've got to do all the things, the healthy things. I've got to get all the vitamins right now. I have to do it right now. And I need it this second, instead of like thinking about it and being okay with it. And like sometimes I'll be like, this is toxic and poisonous, I'm throwing it away, before finishing the bottle, which might be. Anyway, so I do feel that way. I do think also the playful piece, like with my kids, everyone comments on this. This is like, and Kaylee has experienced this because I was at her house for 2 weeks and she had to deal with me. But I am a consummate singer to my children. Like, when I'm like, we need to do the chores, everyone do chores. Like, I make up the songs as as like we're
It's
going.
the best, everyone. Like, if you get the opportunity to hear Julie singing to her children about what needs to happen, it is the best.
In order not to yell, I need to sing. Like, I have to do the singing thing instead. And I did find that when I used to babysit other people's kids, which I hated doing, but that's just like the truth about me. I did not like it. But when I used to babysit other people's kids, I'm like, I turn into like this magic school bus teacher, like preschool teacher over here. Like, all of a sudden, I am like, we're going to go on a magic carpet ride and we're going to do this together and like make fishies with our hands. I'm like, why don't I do this with my own kids? I don't know. But like when other people's kids are here, now I have to be a preschool teacher. So those are some of the ways I've experienced it. Again, that is the sixth house. For other fire signs, because this is very Aryan, but much of it will probably apply to you because it's a fire sign. But your flavor, right? If it's in Leo, there might be more of this performative nature. Like, I've got to perform as a mother. I need to make sure that I'm doing the best things. And it might also be about, like, depending on the house, how your children look, or like making things sparkly and beautiful. It might be about and like having fun in that way. It also could be like the teacher, right? Like, you feel a deep need to impart wisdom to your children often. Like, you need to teach them often and like let them explore, and like exploring is really important to you, and that's how you interact with them. Or maybe you had a parent who was very much your mother was very much like that with you. Or maybe, as like, if you've got Ceres and Leo, your mother wound might be that you feel like your mom was performing, like for other people, like she was performing as a mother, she wasn't as performative to you. That could be a possibility. What are you thinking, Jan? Other things you guys want to say about fire and Ceres?
I have no idea. I think you covered it, really.
Well, I'll just say take care of yourself. If you have a Ceres and a fire sign, make sure that you take care of yourself, and it's okay to, take care of yourself before other things so that you can be the mom you want to be, and be careful about burning too hot, or because that is another thing for me. I feel like I burn too hot sometimes, as far as I can just get so angry, but making sure, you're taking care of yourself so you don't burn too hot or burn out too much.
So good. Such good advice for literally everybody too, because that in general is a problem. But more than likely, if you have Ceres and a fire sign, your mothering depends on you actually taking care of yourself first. Your capability depends on that. It's so important. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Just 6 podcast episodes just talking about that, I think. So I swear, that's what the entire cornerstone of the reason I do any of this work is built on. I feel like I've said that 5 times in the last 2 episodes, so I don't know. We're hitting some really important stuff. Clearly, the asteroid goddesses are top priority.
They're a big
Kaylee's
deal.
see Kaylee nodding duh. What were you thinking it was gonna be? I don't know. What if I have Ceres in an earth sign, which I do, right? We just talked about my Virgo, which is literally the only thing I have in Virgo. So it's nice to know that I have something in Virgo and that I can be, someone who plans on in some level, but which is true. I would love to do meal planning where I just cook an entire week's meal worth of food and then just eat it later. I would totally do that. Not everybody in my family would like that though. So, but what are some other good characteristics of Ceres in an earth sign?
For it, Julie.
Okay.
You looked like you were ready to talk.
I love Earth. I am mostly Earth in my chart, so this is why. Okay, I would imagine Ceres in an Earth sign. I liked what you laid out there, Jan, because you may feel like you have to be prepared as a mother and have that deep knowledge base and preparation, very practical, right? I am a practical mom. I do things in a down to earth way. And you may be organizing things exactly what Jan said. To you, you're man, even if you don't do it, you're meal planning is a great idea. That's a good gig. And I should do that thing and put it together and have all the freezer meals and have it. And you may feel I would say if you have Ceres in an earth sign, this can apply sometimes to fire as well. But if you have it in an earth sign, you may feel you're constantly hard on yourself as a mom. I'm not a good mom. And sometimes that's because people with earth signs often have other aspirations, especially if you have it's in Capricorn or something like that. You may have this I have the need to work and I've got to work really hard. Virgo's like that too. I need to have other jobs. I need to be doing other things. Taurus is less that way, but it can be this, trying to do things in a way that the word tradition came to mind, but in a rooted way, or you have this idea of yourself as a mother that well, this is what a good mom does because this is the tradition, or this is the roots, or this is how I felt, and maybe needing to break away from that idealism of what a mother looks like in that piece. But yeah, being hard on yourself is probably going to be as a mother is going to be probably huge, because earth signs really tend to beat themselves up a ton. And also, like I said, just down to earth, wanting and making sure that I should apply this to abundance too. Should apply this to harvesting things too, and the seasonality. But for you, it might be really important to actually be a little more conscious about planting seeds and where you're going, planning things out, and in your harvest, and slow and steady does it. I think for everybody, but for earth signs especially, studying how in real life harvesting happens is probably really applicable. Wanting to make things really beautiful aesthetically, but also the sciencey thing is a thing, right? I feed my children well because it's practical and sciencey, and I like the science stuff. I'm sure I'm missing stuff. Go ahead, Kaylee.
Well, I was just going to say that, regardless of whether you are a mother or not, whether you are a man or a woman, Ceres in an earth sign, it's there's going to be a certain degree of practicality, but also does it feel good when it comes to the kind of food that you eat? And then when you experience grief or rage, especially around your creations or things not turning out the way you wanted them to, not being able to harvest what you thought you would get to harvest, like the fire signs are more likely to blow up over it. Like explosive grief, explosive rage, however you want to look at that. But the earth signs are going to be more likely to go cold, to withdraw within, like to go inside themselves and like cold shoulder people, or just like pretend everything's fine when it is very much not fine. So that's something to just be aware of. If you have your Ceres in an earth sign and you have that tendency, like just recognizing, when I cut off everything, I cut off everything. Like I'm not receiving support from other people. I'm not receiving support from the earth. Like maybe I can feel what I honestly feel and do it in a way that is grounding instead of isolating.
Yeah, watch out for being too stubborn. I think also like things have to be like your harvest has to look a certain way. Like having high expectations is a very earth thing. I need to have these high expectations of how stuff is supposed to look, how my harvest is supposed to look, how my kids, like in myself as a mom, or the way my relationship with my mother was supposed to look. And there is a possibility that you feel like your mother was overbearing and had expectations on you if you have your Ceres there as well.
I totally, in my early motherhood years, especially, but even sometimes now, I would imagine that everyone else had it figured out. Everyone else had their life put together. Everyone else had everything planned out. Everyone else had the right amount of support, and that I was just the oddball, and like I missed some kind of bus that I was supposed to get on. It's just really funny. It's just really funny. And I had all these high expectations that like I wasn't even in a position to like exist in, but I just assumed everyone else would like everyone else except me. I'm special. I get less. I love it. So good. Okay, so let's move to Ceres in air. What does that look like? What does that feel like?
All right. So my Ceres is in an air sign. My Ceres is in Gemini. And speaking from my own experience, but also like observation of clients and just extrapolation of information that I know about astrology and about human beings, having Ceres in an air sign, mothering, nurturing, nourishing, it can have an intellectual quality to it. It can have a like, what's the information around this? What's the data? And what's the theory? And it can be very heady and experimental. You may experiment a lot with different types of food, different ways of nourishing your body, different ways of mothering if you are a mother, or mothering in air quotes, because people who haven't given birth to children absolutely can mother other people. Doing it in a way that's like a fostering of ideas, being really involved in the intellectual development of other people can be in a Ceres in an air sign quality. And then when it comes to grief and rage and like, hey, that's not how I wanted it to be. The harvest was supposed to be this way and it's not turning out this way. You can have a tendency to either like kind of go airy fairy and like, I'm pretending everything is good. I'm going to get distracted by social media or by this or by that. Or you are more likely to intellectualize your emotion instead of actually feeling it and allowing it to process.
Yeah, that's really good. You know how Jan was like, I feel like I don't understand earth as much. I'm like, I feel like air is like my weak. That's where I feel weak. I mean, it's so funny because Juno and Libra, like, therefore are like important parts of my chart, but I have Jupiter in Libra, you guys. I have Jupiter in Libra, but my south node is in Gemini, and so sometimes like air for me is harder. But I could.
Well, Libra is the wateriest of the air signs, I have to say.
It's true.
Or the earthiest, one of them.
It is. It's true. But what came to mind for this was needing balance, right? Like needing to have balance and be balanced and wanting everything to play nice, like trying to smooth it over so things play nice with each other, so your kids play nice with each other, like wanting to make things balance out together. And also this like tendency to sometimes, kind of like Kaylee was saying, because sometimes air can be like, I'm going to avoid this deep, dark thing because I cannot deal with it. Like, I would rather just talk up here. Like, I'm going to talk up here instead of like down deep. And so sometimes there can be this like tendency to be passive aggressive and not know why you're being passive aggressive, or like not realize it because you are, you're not dealing with the deeper thing that's actually connected to that. You're not getting down to the root of it. You're staying in the airy, like up here in this airy fairy area. And that can be difficult, especially as it relates to like your relationships with your mother or mother figures, the people you mother, being a mother, and not like understanding, feeling like, why do I feel this pull? I feel like Kaylee said about earth, air is a little more likely to disconnect and go cold rather than to like heat up and fire up. As far as like when things go not your expectations or your harvest isn't met. And then the other thing I wanted to say about this, because I was thinking about Aquarius in this, is like feeling like your place as a mother has to serve a greater purpose, like to the collective, like in some way that you have to be what you do with your children or the people you mother, or like everything needs to go to this greater purpose of serving a whole collective. And kind of maybe sometimes because of that we miss the individualization, or maybe like the way you live. The other way to take this is like you need to give yourself permission to do things your own way also as a mother, especially if you're dealing with Aquarius there. If you're dealing with Libra there, I think the balance is probably going to be a deal thing for you, trying to keep things balanced and feel like things are just in your relationships with them. Like, was this just to me? Was this good for me? Like, is this good for everyone? And Gemini might be more of that. I need to be able to explore both sides, ask questions, and motherhood may bring up lots of questions for you, questions you didn't have before, or dealing with it. Your relationship with your mother might bring up lots of questions that you have to then deal with. But yeah, that's what I think.
I feel like the phrase feed the world is just Ceres in Aquarius, the end. Like when people say, oh, how do we feed the world with this? Like, why are we talking about Ceres in Aquarius right now?
Oh, sorry, this is not that I am a medical astrologer, but what came to mind was having variety in your diet can be really important for air, right? And I know this from talking to Dr. Divya, but also who came on and talked, but also I've read like a couple medical astrology books. I'm learning. But yeah, that always comes up for air, like variety, needing to have variety. And so like having variety in what you grow as well, like a variety of ideas, but also like in your physical food, having variety and in your physical stuff.
Yeah, I can attest to that in my own experience as a native with Ceres in Gemini. If food is the same for too long, I'm like, no. No, no, thank you. I never want to eat again. And even ideas like and how I parent and things like that, I'm always taking in more information and tweaking things and adjusting things. And there's got to be this variety. So yeah, definitely can attest to that.
I love this. I love how accurate it is because I could literally eat the same thing every day. Also, that's in my human design chart. Like, there's a part in your human design where you can find out like how is the best way for you to eat. And for me, it is like you could eat the same thing every day at the same time every day, whatever. That is the only consistency thing in my chart. Like the only in any of my charts. I could literally just day in day out, same thing. 1 week the same thing. The next week something different though, likely. So fun. I love how Ceres is connected to both motherhood and how we nourish and how we experience abundance. Like there's so much here and I'm just loving this conversation. Let's talk about the very last one, Ceres in water, because under Resonant Astrology, Ceres is actually a ruler of a water sign.
Mm-hmm.
So she's very hot and she's got water right on her body. So what does it mean for none of us? We've all revealed our series placements. So no one has a water, surprisingly, with all the water going on in this group of people. No one has Ceres in a water sign. Wild. So, but let's theorize. And people can just text us or email us and say, "Oh, I have Ceres and water sign. It's true for me," or "You guys are totally wrong." But speculate away, please.
Well, Ceres and water, there's a part of my brain that's like, wait, Ceres and water, how is that a thing? Which is weird because, yeah, in my own astrology system, Ceres is a ruler. She rules a water sign. And I think the reason my brain is struggling with it is that it is a very natural expression for Ceres to be in. It is so natural for Aries, or not Aries, Ceres to be in a water sign. There's a certain fluidity, inexorability. Water is inexorable. It just flows and it wears things down and it moves through things. And so with Ceres in that, there's this sense of like, this is a human being who is going to nurture and nourish in a way that's just irresistible. And there's an emotional component. There is absolutely like a high emotionality is probably going to be a hallmark of Ceres in a water sign. And just this connection to like, okay, this abundance that I'm experiencing, I'm experiencing it in the physical, but also there's a spiritual component. There's a beyond component, whether it's an emotional component or an actual like spiritual component, that is important to you with Ceres and water, and that you cannot separate them out. And speaking a little bit more to the Scorpio flavor of water, Ceres in Scorpio, when you burn it down, is going to be vengeful. There will be no prisoners and there will be lots of pain. But even with Cancer and Pisces, with that burn it down energy, there's still going to be this intensity of emotion that's different than fire intensity. That's more like, this is coming from the core of my being. Like, this is like, this feeling is who I am in this moment. Like, yeah, there's just this embodiment, I guess you could say, of emotion that happens sometimes with water that would make sense to me to show up more readily when Ceres is in water.
I super agree. I was actually thinking about this as like, what is the moon like in a water sign a little bit? Or like, what is it like to have the moon in Cancer? It kind of came to mind. And of course, if you have Ceres in her domicile in Cancer, she's probably going to bloom there a little bit more, have a little bit better of a time. But one thing I wanted to, well, there are two things. One, I can definitely see this as the person that's like, I must meet the emotional needs of my children. Like, I have to meet or everyone I mother. I have to meet their emotional needs and make sure they're okay, and like make sure that they feel good, and wanting them to feel good, and make like having emotional connections as really important to you, and really especially in this aspect of your life. And especially in the things that you harvest too, like the things that you want them to have a deep emotional connection and connectivity. And when they don't, that can be really hard, I think. And I was going to say, on the flip side though, of what Kaylee was saying, the difficulty with this might be avoiding emotional manipulation. So maybe you have a mother wound around being emotionally manipulated by a mother figure in your life. That could definitely be something that comes up, especially I think in that Scorpio placement. I mean, in any of the water placements, but I think definitely in that Scorpio placement, watching out for that in your life. And or like feeling like someone uses emotions, or maybe feeling like you have to use your own emotions to get things done as a mother, or to like be validated, or to be connected. That might be some of the downside of this, or like the difficulty of this. And like we see this in Demeter, right? Like in some ways she used other mean, like she killed the earth, but like her raw emotion, right, overpowered Jupiter and made it so that, he's like, okay, fine, I'll listen to you. So making this, just being watchful for that. And people listening to this who have this might be surprised because they're so caring. they probably really care a lot, care about their kids. I want to nurture their kids so much. But also, like, this is the person who brings like all the soup to the party, right? Like, I need to feed everybody the soup. I need to bring everyone all the delicious like food, and like that picture that Jayanne painted earlier, right? Like, I can definitely see that also being a part of it. If you do have Scorpio, also that privacy aspect, sometimes maybe hiding your emotions from yourself too. So just watching for that. And then spirituality and intuition is always going to be a big piece of this, of course. So really listening to your intuition when it comes to mothering, watching out for spiritual manipulation, but also using spiritual practices as being a big part of your life.
And I just want to add to that really quickly. It popped into my head. Emotional eating may be a challenge, especially for someone who has Ceres in a water sign. Emotional eating or using food as a means of, like, how do I phrase this? Spiritual punishment for not being good enough.
I was literally just gonna bring up eating disorders in the Ceres water signs, especially Scorpio. I could see that, like, hiding how you eat, hiding when you eat, hiding all of that, but also, like you're saying with, Pisces, yeah, just using it as a way to self-punish. Yeah, or yeah, and then in Cancer, I could totally see that manifesting as, like, a way of, like, overeating to stuff emotions. Yeah, series and we didn't even talk about this series is where you're gonna look at for your mother wound. So and everybody has one. It's just part of life because we are human beings and no one's perfect, and my my friend and I have a theoretical book that we've been writing, but not actually writing in our minds since, like, I don't know, 2017. It's called Your Mom's a Biatch and It's Okay.
Okay, this book needs to exist in the real world.
It does. He literally was like, I'm gonna buckle down this year, right? And I'm like, you say that every year. But it really is like that, and it comes up so much in these like watery themes because water is very mothering. But it's everybody has a terrible mother and a great mother, right? Like everybody has one and is one. And that's okay. And that's okay. And it's part of the human experience. It's weird that it's part of the human experience that this most nourishing, nurturing being is also sometimes our most terrifying enemy. And how does that happen? And where does that come from? And honestly, it's just the dichotomy of this world we live in is that everything has two sides to it, even contained within one. So yeah, this is where you're gonna look for your mother wound and your eating disorders too.
Well, and what you were just saying, Jan, like, I get really passionate about this, that like the rift that often comes between mothers and their children, but especially mothers and their daughters. I genuinely believe it stems from the pendulum being too far one way or the other, as far as like masculine and feminine energy. What's more important? Which one has more power? When in reality, like, if we could get to a place of recognizing that both energies empower the other, I don't think there would be these rifts. I don't think it would be such a natural part of life, and that there would be so much more healing going on, because women wouldn't have, like, we could have a whole episode times 12 about this concept, but just it's the power over paradigm that fragments the relationship between mothers and their children,
Mm.
and fragments all other relationships, because that is the most foundational, original relationship. I mean, I would argue that the relationship between a man and a woman is equally foundational, in that they come together to create the child. But like, we've got so many rifts between men and women as it is, and I think sometimes we forget to talk about the rifts between mother and child that exist because of the energy dynamics that just are not equitable and are not unifying.
Yeah, it's interesting because what I wanted to say too is like sometimes we put so much on moms too. We're always like, it's always your mom's fault, like
Mhm.
it's
Yes.
always, and like it's always, and as a mother, like then when you become a mother, it's like so much to take on because you realize this about your mother, and then you're like, oh my gosh, this is going to be me. Like it's always my fault, like as the mom. And also, I think sometimes we mistake our mother wounds when they're really our father wounds. We have a deeper, like Kaylee was saying, their pain comes from the masculine side, but we are so unwilling to look at that because it's always like again, there's an actual cord between you and your mother. They're the person, like, you think you are your mother for the first year or so of your life, right? So there's always going to be this deep psyche connection with that, and more likely to be like, ugh, mom, which is the whole thing with this dynamic of like, oh, wait till your dad gets home and they'll listen to your dad and they don't listen to me, and it's just really interesting. There's so much we could say about this. It's all coming up because Ceres has so much connection to this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and it's also that specific thing. And I want to say this out loud for all the moms who feel like they're the worst to hear. It's so easy to blame the person who was there. And it's really hard to blame the person who wasn't there. So if you were a single mom, or your dad was off doing the work thing and wasn't home that often, it's really easy to get wrapped up in everything's mom's fault because she was there. She was just doing everything. And it takes a lot of emotional and mental gymnastics to get to the point where it's like, this was missing from somebody who just wasn't even there. And now we're taking the blame off of the mother and going, okay, that goes to this bucket over here. And at least we can cut that in half and be like, oh, my mom isn't the worst in the world because she didn't show up for me in every single way I needed. Those kinds of things are really important. But also remembering, like, if you are that mom and you're like, man, I was the worst mom in the world because I didn't show up in every single way my kids needed, give yourself a break, because there might have been somebody else who just wasn't able to be present for whatever reason. So that's my other soapbox.
I think that's a perfect way to wrap up. Give yourself a break, moms.
Yeah.
Look at your Ceres, find your wound, then see, how do I heal this thing, right? Like, how am I going to let go of it? If it's I'm over emotionally giving, okay, give back to myself. Am I, do I have too high expectations for myself? Okay, I'm going to re-examine those, right? So taking care of yourself deeply. And I am sure we will have more podcast episodes about the mother wound in general. So I'm really excited to talk about them, but this has been awesome.
So good. Yes. So look at where Ceres is in your chart. See what it's speaking, how she's speaking to you. Look at how you nourish yourself, how you nourish others, how you mother yourself, how you mother others, your relationship with your mother, how you deal with shared relationships, right? Where you have kids with another person. Your kid got married and is now no longer 24/7 in your life, how you're relating to all of that, and see what speaks to you and look at your chart. And that's how you deal with Ceres. It's a big, tall order, though, guys. I'm telling you, this was so good. All right. Well, see you all next week. And I love you so much. Have a great one.
Thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did. Please make sure to give us a 5-star rating wherever you are listening and share with someone you know. See you next week.